walker who dawdles through the bush take the opportunity of noticing small plants and slow-moving animals and insects and spiders. And it's an advantage to walk with other people of similar interests because they're tolerant of you walking slowly. The Frog and Tadpole Study Group, FATS, which I belong to, have been surveying frogs, reptiles, mammals and birds twice yearly from a base at the University of New South Wales field station at Smiths Lake for decades. And Philip and I have been going up there since about 2007. The area lies between Bulahdelah, that's just off the Pacific Highway nowadays, and the legendary Seal Rocks Lighthouse. The beaches there are lovely surfing locations, and it's in the North Coast bioregion of New South Wales, and it's adjacent to the Myall Lakes National Park, which is all around this area. This is a table of some of the terrestrial orchids that I have seen over the years. They've not been found by surveys, but just by occasional seeing them and photographing them. And I wasn't supposed to be looking at orchids. We were doing other things, but they just happened to get in the road. They're mostly found besides tracks and roads. They grow in all seasons, but they're more often noticed in autumn and spring in particular. On the table, the common name is here, which aren't necessarily commonly used, but they're easier for people to remember. And then the scientific name. And then we go up sort of twice a year, not in consistent months. So I've just listed the first half of the year in this column and the second half of the year in this column. And you can see that there's the occurrences across the different years. There's far more in the second half of the year in the springtime otherwise. Now, I'll just walking through the different species that we've got here, and just interesting to see different ones that you may not see in other areas. So this one's common name is the purple heart fingers, and it was growing along the side of a sandy track which passes past the field station and goes out towards the coast on the east. Photos were taken in September, and it's probably pollinated by multiple insects, mostly small native bees. It's not a commonly seen species. And this one is called the large pink fingers, and it's possibly an endangered species in that area, and it was on the same track we saw that one. Okay, now this is the track, so it gives you an idea of National Parks keep it open as a fire track, but it's vehicles aren't allowed because it's definitely fenced off from public access. And the people here were just photographing the next orchid on our list, which is the flying duck orchid. Sue Fredrickson might recognise Punya. Whoops. Okay.
Bushwalking friend.
Yeah. So this is the flying duck orchid, Caladinia major, and it's possibly pollinated by sawfly larvae. Now, this is not necessarily the species that pollinates it, but it just gives you an idea of what a sawfly adult appears like. We're all used to the sawfly larva, which we call tend to send out rather nasty fluids if you get too close.
Spitfires, I think.
That's the word. Thanks. another orchid that we found along banks as you drove into the station, and they were on elevated areas, so you could just look at them very readily, is the common wasp orchid, Chiloglottis diphylla. And mostly you see the paired leaves. You don't see many flowers, but and the flowers are very tiny and well camouflaged amongst the leaf litter and everything else. This orchid tuber was exposed just by the way the water had washed it out. And it was actually hanging upside down, but I turned it around so that you can understand what it is. And these are probably pollinated by male finding wasps, and the wasps come in thinking that this is a female wasp. And so I've put a female wasp here of a similar species. Probably pollinators for many of these plants are specific to areas as well as to the species. So what are reported as pollinators in other states or other areas may not be the local pollinators. And I think Rudy Keiter has shown that very clearly in his studies in Victoria. So the male wasp comes on and clasps the labellum of the orchid and goes to fly away with her, and he gets dragged up onto the pollinia of the orchid, and then these are attached to him. And when he does it a second time, he may pollinate the next orchid. So this is the wingless female. Another frequently seen species are the Cymbidium suaves, which are attached to many different trees and make a lovely lot. They're more frequently seen at the end of the year, and these ones are on paperbarks, which is less common than what we see them around Sydney. Normally we see them on eucalypts, and they'll even grow in the stumps, so they're doing very well up there. And they're probably pollinated by the little tetragonula native bees. So the rats, oops. Okay, so there were a lot of Cryptostylis seen up there, and this was just a photo I took from in the wildflower gardens at St Ives of the pollinating wasp actually in location with the pollinia attached, but they're all scattered through the eucalyptus bushland in that area. And Dendrobium, probably Territifolium on the Casuarina glaucus, more down towards the Myall Lake area rather than up on the hillsides. You had to get very close to the lake's edge to see these plants. They weren't in flower, but you could see the shaping of the way the leaves were together. And Dipodium variegatum, the blotched hyacinth orchids, quite a few of them through there, getting towards the end of their time. And one of the orchids that we love going up there to see is the bootlace orchid. And the orchid stem, this is the lake behind, so you can see that we're on a very steep slope above the lake on Horse Point. And the stem of the orchid goes up well beyond Philip's height up to here. And these are the flowers just about to come out, and these are the fruit pods after the orchid has been pollinated. So you see a lot of pollination has gone on there. And it's sort of very special species to see that each year. A less special species is the little Microtis, the onion orchids, which are thought to be pollinated by ants, most likely. This is just an ant on a Microtis, but no sign of pollinia attached to them. Mostly ants aren't good pollinators because of their formic acid, but apparently the structure of the pollinia on Microtis allow them to be pollinators with that species. And the Microtis were, as well as other places, they were around the edge of this little artificial lake with foreign water lilies in it, but a pleasant spot, very much favoured by birds. Now, this was the most thrilling thing I found on one of our recent trips up there, which was after a burn. And this is a very large area of sedges and very waterlogged low area that didn't burn, but it was on the edge of the burnt area. So that's the Spiranthes australis. And just as an example of a visiting bee, this is the European honeybee, but not at Smith's Lake. I just had that one from another location. So this is the large marshy area, which I noticed the goodenias were quite prolific there as well, as you had in the area where the burning was done, and all sorts of little drosseras and comosperma and other little fungi and things. So, and xyruses. Now, the important part for the burning, this area was part of the swamp that was burnt. There was a controlled fire was set up far over the other side of the main road, and it escaped and caused a burning of a much larger area of the bush. You can see that it's there's recovering trees here, but the swamp was just absolutely covered with the Christmas bells, the Blandfordia grandiflora, which is the local species up there. Now, it was a really good chance to work out how many or what the proportion of the yellow variants were compared with the normal yellow-tipped red Christmas bells. And they were very low proportion of the yellow ones were visible, but that whole area was just so full of them, absolutely beautiful. And just to know the difference, this is the grandiflora bell, and it grows further north, mostly north of the Hunter River. And this is the species that's our group emblem and local species, Blandfordia nobilis. That was my story.
If you enjoyed this video, why not subscribe and view other great content? New videos being added all the time.